Start. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Planning Committee meeting of Tuesday, the 5th of May. We start with the usual live streaming address, which I will read. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of Gravesham Borough Council's Planning Committee. I intend to go through some housekeeping rules. This meeting is being live streamed via YouTube and recorded. The recordings will be uploaded to YouTube within 2 working days, where it can be accessed by everyone. Members, please use the microphone in front of you when you're talking and ensure that you turn your microphone off once you finish speaking. Another member or officer will not be able to speak if your microphone is still on. Please note the Council's visual equipment may on occasions focus on or near the public gallery area. Therefore, those in attendance of this meeting may be filmed or recorded. Attendance at this meeting signifies your agreement to this. If as a member of the public you do not wish to be filmed or recorded, please inform a Council staff member in attendance and we will try to assist where reasonably possible. On hearing the fire alarm, we will ask all attendees to immediately evacuate the building. Please evacuate via the nearest fire exits and make your way to Community Square outside the main reception doors. Thank you, colleagues. So that is item 1. I'm now looking at item 2, apologies for absence.
We've received an apology for absence from Councillor Leslie Pearton. Councillor Leslie Hills is attending as his substitute.
Thank you. That then brings us on to sign the minutes of a previous meeting, which was on the 8th of April. Can I seek agreement to sign those minutes? Yes. Looking around people, thank you very much. Declarations of interest. Has anybody got an interest to declare? I'm looking around, I see nobody. That moves us on to consider whether any items in item A of the agenda should be considered in item B. I've no reason to move anything from item A to item B, which then brings us on to planning applications for determination by the committee. The first one is Buckland Farm, Chalk Road, Higham. We have already had a discussion on this, and we then adjourned the discussion for a site visit. I am therefore assuming that we do not need to move back to the general discussion. I will assume that we can now move to the site visit where we have had a report. We will take the report on the site visit. I will then invite the ward councillor who was not present at the last meeting if he wants to say anything related to that site visit. And then I will invite members of the committee only to discuss the item as we see before us, and then we'll move for determination. And that is Buckland Farm, Chalk Road, Higham. So can I move to a presentation on the site visit?
Thank you, Chair. This is a short presentation to set out briefly the key points from the previous committee presentation. The application seeks outline planning permission for the demolition of existing buildings and erection of up to 40 dwellings, provision of public open space and associated works. Approval is sought for the principal development and principal means of vehicular access from Chalk Road, with all other matters reserved. The reserved matters are appearance, landscaping, layout, scale, which are not being considered within this application. For members' clarification, the slide here shows the red line of the application site. And this shows the land use parameter plan. So you've got residential development at the front and the open space to the rear. This is an illustrative master plan showing how the applicant could accommodate up to 40 dwellings on the site with open space to the rear. As set out in the report, KCC and Highways England do not object to the proposal, subject to the imposition of conditions and mitigation being secured. This includes highway improvements, cycle parking improvements at the local centre and Higham station, as well as highway safety measures. The application site is located in the grey belt defined in the NPPF as land which does not contribute to any of the purposes of including land in the green belt, as set out in paragraph 6.34 of the committee report. As explained in paragraph 6.4 of the report before you, footnote 7 states, exclusion to the definition of grey belt, of which only 2 are applicable to the site, which are habitat sites, flood risk. As stated in the committee report, the impact is minimal and does not provide a strong reason for refusing the development of flood risk. As stated in paragraph 6.46 to 6.49 of the committee report, the site does not strongly contribute to the green belt, purposes A, B or D, which are set out on this slide before you. Paragraph 155 of the NPPF states that the development of homes, commercial and other development in the green belt should not be regarded as inappropriate where all of the following considerations apply. Utilise grey belt land and does not fundamentally undermine the purposes of the remaining green belt in the area. Demonstrate unmet need for the type of development proposed. It would be in a sustainable location and meets the golden rules. This is set out in paragraph 6.50 to 6.82 of the committee report. The development is not inappropriate development in the green belt and is therefore compliant with policy CS02 of the local plan. Turning to the golden rules, paragraph 156 of the NPPF states that where major development involving the provision of housing is proposed on land in the green belt, which is subject to a planning application, the following contributions, e.g. golden rules, should be made. In this case, the development should provide 50% affordable housing, should provide necessary improvements to local and national infrastructure, and provide new improved green space for the public. This proposal will provide up to 20 affordable dwellings, which equates to 50% affordable housing, and this will be secured through planning obligations. Improvement to infrastructure includes a financial contribution to a bus service, towards cycle parking at the station, highway improvements, and including extending the pavement, increasing speed bumps. The proposal also includes a new open space and play area, which will be accessible to the wider public. There are currently 2 outstanding objections from the Drainage Board and League Local Flood Authority. These objections relate to the condition of the culvert shown in orange on the plan. The culvert is in the ownership of Network Rail, who have responsibility to maintain the culvert. The applicant has been actively engaged with Network Rail. Network Rail have subsequently confirmed they are responsible and state that the culvert is running under the track and that they do manage it. They have committed to ensuring that the culvert is maintained and that they will address the issues that have been raised as a result of this application. At the site inspection, a query was raised in relation to how many employees worked at the site. The owners of the site have confirmed that most of the businesses are operated by their respective owners, with 1 part-time employee working for USpec Limited. The slide before you there shows the employees and the units. Thank you. Turning to the summary and reasons, vehicular access is demonstrated to be acceptable. We do not have a 5-year housing supply. The site is sustainable. Grey belt designation carries significant weight. Loss of employment floor space in Grade 1 land is acknowledged, but is outweighed by the need for housing. The development is therefore acceptable in principle. The recommendation is before you. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. I'm looking at members of a committee. I'm grateful now, Aaron, I can actually see you, so there's no problem. I wonder if anybody wants points of clarification or information from the committee. Les.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As was announced earlier, I wasn't at the last meeting. I'm not normally a member of this committee. I'm standing in for Councillor Pearton. So obviously I wasn't at the last meeting. I took the trouble to see the recording that's available to the public. And one of the things questioned was the number of units for development. And the reply was that as we're only talking about outline planning permission, we haven't to consider, there's no need to consider numbers of units. I found that peculiar because I thought that's directly relevant to the detailed, to the outline planning permission that was being sought, rather. For example, supposing we were talking about 1,000 units, and are we to say that that's not relevant because we're only talking about outline permission? I think it's particularly relevant. So I would like some clarification on that point, please.
Right, Shazad, do you want to clarify?
Thank you, Chair. So this application would be subject to the description of the application. The description of the application is on the screen before you, and it expressly states that it's an outline planning application for the demolition of existing buildings and erection of up to 40 residential dwellings. It then goes on. So this site could not deliver more than 40 residential dwellings, but can deliver obviously less than 40, hence the up to figure. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Lynn.
Thank you, Chair. This again was going to be my clarification. And you can 100% say that it's up to 40 homes, no more, at any time on this site, and 50% will be affordable. I just want really clarification, like Councillor Hills, that all sorts of rumours are going around, which I keep hearing, and I just want clarification, like Councillor Hills, that there will only be up to 40 homes. That's 40, not 400, not 1,000, 40. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Milner. So this application is constrained by the description of development, and we can only consider the application before us, and that specifically states that it's only up to 40 residential dwellings. So to do anything more than 40 residential dwellings would be unlawful because it would be in breach of the permission. So that hopefully addresses that. As set out within the officer report, in order to meet the golden rules that are set out in the National Planning Policy Framework, the applicant is committed to delivering 50% affordable housing. So that is, again, up to 20 units, and that up to figure will be dependent on what the overall figure is on the site, which will come out through reserve matters in due course if a permission is forthcoming. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Well, I think you've proved my point that the number of units is a relevant factor that can be discussed and has been discussed now. So I think the numbers of units that we're talking about, even in an outline planning application, is a relevant factor for us to consider. Another point, Mr. Richard Hart said that any development has to be sustainable. When I became a councillor, I did ask the then Chief Executive for the definition of a sustainable community. And he said it's an area for a residential area that has all of the relevant facilities, schools, hospitals, medical provision, and sports facilities, and so on. From what I saw of the last meeting, and from what I've read in the reports, and from what I hear from the residents of Higham, this particular development has nowhere near the question.
Councillor, can I just come in for a minute?
Aspects.
I very much value what you're saying, but I think that's probably relevant to the further discussion we're going to have in a few minutes, but rather than the site report itself. Thank you. I'm looking around for Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Chair. I was just wondering whether you could clarify the number of businesses that will be impacted by this who are on site at the moment. I know we saw a list there, but the number would be nice just to make it more tangible. And then I'd like your opinion on whether that conflicts with the economic development policies in our development plan, and then whether you believe that is a material consideration that's been properly weighed or not. Thank you.
Through you, Chair. The businesses there are on the screen before you. All businesses would be lost on the site. We have considered that, and it's been a material consideration, but on balance, the housing need outweighs the loss of the employment uses on site. Thank you.
Thank you. Samir.
It's a quick point. I mean, when you say employees 0, owner operated, those are still actually people that are running and using that business. You know, if an owner is still an employee of sorts, it's slightly misleading. I can see why you've obviously chosen to use the 000 for impact, but the fact is that a lot of those companies, I'm sure higher marquees, there's not 0 people going in. There's probably several or a lot of people going in and out of there who help run the company, and vice versa for all the rest of them. So just, was that just done for effect, or was there a reason behind that?
Thank you, Chair. So that was the information provided to us by the owners of the site. We've replicated that for yourselves. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. No. Nobody else? No. Councillor.
One of the features, as I understand it, that makes this an outline planning application is for there to be 50% affordable housing. When I attended the training on grey belt, there seems to be some doubt as to the definition of affordable housing. I know that there's a comprehensive explanation in the National Planning Policy Framework, but I think it can be summarised by saying social, rented or intermediate housing that and rental shouldn't be more than 80%. But I think it should be made clear that that's not necessarily, in fact, affordable to many, many people. So affordable housing doesn't mean to say that it's affordable to the masses. I thought I'd make that point clear.
Thank you, Councillor. Does anybody want to respond?
I think, as Councillor Hill said, that was a point being made, so I don't think we need to respond. Thank you.
I see no... Frank, do you want to come in?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, looking at this, these 2 entrances coming out onto Chalk Road. Chalk Road, believe it or not, is quite a busy road. And when we was down there for our site visit, I was sort of clocking the speed of cars coming through. At the moment, there's 6 businesses and someone who's got his own animal farm or whatever. But if you put 40 houses on here, that's potentially 80 cars coming out onto a road that is already extremely busy.
Thank you, Councillor. No. Right. I've seen all the comments seeking for information and clarification. I'm now going to move to Ward Councillor, and you're speaking as leader of the opposition and therefore have as long as you wish.
So thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I speak tonight following the very powerful representation that was made by my colleague, Councillor Ashenden, at the last meeting. So I'm not going to replicate the points that she made because I believe that those points are still entirely valid. But I do wish to add some more general remarks, as you quite rightly said, as Leader of the Opposition, but also some additional feedback that I've received from the residents of Higham. So members decided last month that the paper report before you did not capture the gravity of the proposal, and you rightly deferred the application for site visit. Now that councillors have had the opportunity to walk these fields and to see the very beautiful landscape of Higham for yourselves, I am here tonight appealing to this committee on behalf of the residents of Higham for you to reject this application. For what you saw on that site visit was not simply unused space, as some would suggest. These fields are a fundamental part of the rural fabric that defines the village setting of Higham. Members tonight need to understand that this is not simply infilling a road, some vacant space with a few houses. For if you permit this application tonight, you need to be aware that you are voting in favour of the creation of a suburban estate of some 40 plus dwellings being plonked into the middle of our countryside. On a scale, massing and bulk alone, this application should be refused. And I believe that on the scale, the massing and the bulk, you actually have solid material planning considerations to reject this application. For this scheme, in my view, constitutes the very definition of grotesque overdevelopment. I refuse to accept that this is grey belt land, and I know that we've had many debates in this council as to what constitutes green belt versus the grey belt, but it's my view, and it remains my view, that this is not grey belt land, that this is green belt land, and I think that the council is opening itself up to potential legal challenge by classifying this as green belt land. So I'm going to talk under the National Planning Policy Framework as if this is, as it is in my view, green belt land. And this green belt land serves 5 clear purposes. The first of all, it must stop urban sprawl. And I'm afraid to say that this application is the very, very definition of urban sprawl. The National Planning Policy Framework stipulates that the purpose of the green belt, as defined in the NPPF, is to prevent urban sprawl, and yet this application seeks to permit just that. Further, Mr. Chairman, encroachment on the countryside, the National Planning Policy Framework is again clear that it mandates that the council should safeguard our countryside, and yet this proposal demands the permanent and irreplaceable loss of agricultural land, some of the best and most versatile soil that we have. I further want to talk under the Greenbelt definition of preserving character. For Higham, as you all know, is a rural village that once inspired Dickens himself, and the scale of this development and the fundamental permanent loss of the rural openness, I put it to members tonight, would be exactly the contrary of preserving character, as we're required to do under the National Planning Policy Framework updates. Despite what is continually suggested at these meetings, the planning balance is not a mathematical equation. It's our job as members, democratically elected members, to make decisions that are based on the very lived reality of the residents that send us to this place. That is why we have democratic representation at these planning meetings. And I'm here tonight to tell the committee that the lived reality in Higham is a crisis of failed infrastructure. Just last week, I attended a meeting of Higham Parish Council, where the chairman of the governors of Higham Primary School gave a harrowing account of these challenges that are faced by our village school. The school, Mr. Chairman, has now endured 3 separate episodes of total water outage, forcing the closure and disrupting the education of children in this borough. As Councillor Ashenden rightly mentioned at the last meeting, this included the major incident of January of 2026, where hundreds of homes in Higham were left without running water, and again the primary school was forced to close. It is our collective view as ward councillors for Higham that to even propose adding an additional 40 homes to a system that cannot even keep the taps running at our local primary school would not represent just bad planning, but to approve this application tonight on those grounds would be negligent. I further want to highlight that this application sits within a catchment area that is frequently hit by government-issued flood warnings for the tidal Thames. We saw this twice back in October of 2025 and again in March of 2026. Permitting development here ignores the increase in environmental risks posed by climate change, which I have to put to the committee would be rather hypocritical considering that the council declared a climate emergency. Further still, Chairman, to permit this application would be, in my view, to commit ecological irresponsibility. For the report itself admits the lighting impacts on bats are yet still unresolved, and that biodiversity net gain is dependent on some vague statement about future plans. In a highly sensitive area that is close to protected habitats, I put it to the committee that this vagueness is simply not good enough when we're talking about the destruction of our countryside. The committee should also consider the real human cost of permitting this development tonight. Councillor Jassel earlier made a really valid point about the businesses and the fact that the zeros on display tonight are not representative for the true value of those businesses and indeed the wider impact that those businesses have through indirect employment across this borough. This site currently supports rural businesses that are critical to local employment and agricultural purposes, and if permitted, this development could put local people out of work, it could destroy local businesses, and it would, in my view, strip away the businesses that underpin the very viability of the rural economy in Higham. I want to conclude, Mr. Chairman, by making a more general point about the destruction of our green belt, which is relevant not just to this application, but I think to others that we are going to hear this evening. And that is that it's not the fault of Higham residents, and it's not the fault of any resident that this borough has failed to meet unrealistic housing targets. And I ask the committee tonight why it is that the residents of Higham and our wider rural areas should pay the price for the destruction of our countryside and the collapse of local infrastructure. From the site visit, if you took away anything, it was surely that the view is surely that once this land is lost, it is lost forever. And I want to plead to the committee that we owe it to the future generations of this borough to protect what little green space we have left. Chairman, I put it to the committee that you have a plethora of material planning considerations to reject this application. If I was sitting on the committee voting tonight, I would be moving a motion to have this rejected on the Greenbelt grounds alone, and I would hazard a bet that if that went to a planning appeal, that the arguments that we would make for the protection of the Greenbelt here and the protection of agricultural land would stand that test. I put it to the committee chairman that the proposed development is not appropriate, it is not sustainable, and it is not suitable for Higham. So I ask the committee now to listen to the residents of Higham and the evidence that you saw with your own eyes. Please use it to protect our Greenbelt and to refuse this application.
Thank you, Councillor Mead. Right, I'm now going to open this up to debate by members of the committee. Would anybody like to make any proposals, any discussion points? Councillor Milner.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this when not long after I became a councillor, Pat Oakshott, lovely Pat, she was a councillor for Higham for many, many years, all of her councillor's life, and she welcomed homes being built in Higham. That's how they got Juck Court. From memory, I can't remember what area that was, whether it was on a field or what. I know where Juck Court is, but I can't remember, what it was like. So, thinking back, to Pat, I just wonder how she would feel on this one. But she did always want a little bit of housing on Higham, affordable rents, and for people who live in Higham, that doesn't want to move away from their family and the village life.
Councillor Jessel.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, Pat's not here to defend herself. As someone who spent many, many years sort of alongside and working with Pat, I'm sure that particular piece of land she wouldn't have been keen to see developed on. I mean, it's a bottleneck at the best of times trying to get past there. Someone that lives in Higham and uses that quite regularly, the road. To imagine that you could have up to 80, potentially 90 cars coming in and out, and that's once the site's developed, let alone the kind of development stage of, the industrial scale lorries, etc., that'll be going in there to help with the construction, removal of waste, and all of that kind of jazz. I just don't see how that site can cope with that. So from my perspective, it is a bit too much in the Greenbelt, and I think it's a dangerous precedent there. So I won't be supporting this tonight.
Thank you. I'm looking around for other people. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Chair. I just something Councillor Mead struck with me. I wasn't aware that this site was within a catchment area for flood risk. That's very interesting. I think that absolutely should be a material consideration in determining this application. And I just wanted to say I find it quite curious that we can, on the one hand, have a council recommending approval for an application on a floodplain, and then on the other hand, we still have a climate emergency, I think, in force. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I comment? I mean, I was a colleague along with Lynn with Councillor Pat Oakeshott and a very good friend of hers, and I rather share what Councillor Milner said. But Councillor Oakeshott really believed in the community, and the community isn't just the ageing rich community who can afford to live somewhere, but everybody, people who perhaps aspire to live in rural areas, partly because they live there, or they were brought up there and now can no longer afford to live there. I found the site visit very, very interesting, and it's opened my eyes. I have to say that I felt Councillor Ashenden made a very passionate plea about this site. But when I went there, the site didn't seem to be the same to me. First of all, I don't regard this as Grade 1 agricultural land. It certainly isn't. It certainly isn't farmed. I think looking around it, I would say it was more like a brownfield site. There was a large number of vehicles which seemed to have no reason to be there at all other than simply parked there and decaying. I didn't see that the buildings there were really serving a significant purpose. And what I did see is a part of the community down there that probably would benefit from some degree of expansion. I rather suspect that is a less, no, I don't mean it. I mean, probably a lesser interesting area of Higham, partly because less people live there. And I rather think that that's probably having an effect on the railway station and the area around. And it may be that more people living down, good quality housing living there, and people living there might encourage a degree of improvement of the infrastructure. That's not to say I don't recognise the problems that the school and the doctor's surgery and other places have. But I would make the significant point that, yes, we do need to have more housing. We know we want more housing in the urban areas, but developers aren't developing in the urban areas. I'm not saying that developers really are guided into this area, but I think on the balance of probabilities, we would probably be serving the community a misdeed if we didn't at least give the opportunity to see what an outline plan application may come forward, particularly if it does offer us a significant amount of, first of all, affordable homes or social rented homes, and also environmental improvement in an area, looking at that area of a pond there that significantly needs environmental improvement, and that would be open to all members of the village and community. But that's my point of view.
Thank you. Just your point there about there being the lack of facilities. It's cart before horse, but it's not, because it is a material consideration as part of Greenbelt policy that if it is not a sustainable location, it cannot be approved. And I think Councillor Mead quite rightly pointed out that were this to have gone through, we do risk a judicial review on this because it is failing on those Greenbelt tests. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm looking around for, I've seen Frank and then Leslie Hills.
Yeah, going back on what you said, Chair, you said you see some transport vehicles there. If you had a look closer, you would have seen they were road construction vehicles. And as you're saying about urban are not developing, so they want to develop on the rural sites, it's in the local plan that brown belts will be built on first, not build on the rural areas, because developers won't build the brown belt. So, you know, are we going to go against the local plan?
Well, we've made a lot of argument about the green belt and sustainability and affordability and the grey belt and so on. I attended the training on grey belt. I expected to be enlightened, but quite frankly, I came out of the meeting no wiser than I went in, more confused by all the legal and technical terms and phrases and paraphrases and God knows what else. And I'm more convinced than ever that grey belt is just a devious method of building on the green belt through the back door. And it seems to me that where housing targets are concerned, I think we have something like 670 per year for this borough for the next few years. And it seems to me that any concerns about the green belt can be overlooked in favour of housing targets. And that's what we're faced with here. All the arguments in the world about sustainability, the question of hospitals, doctors, schools, medical facilities, all the other things that make up a sustainable community are not here in adequate numbers. And it seems as though, come what may, as the government said initially, even if it means building on the green belt, we've got to meet housing targets, which are probably less than what they should be anyway. So it's a shame. The point that Frank made, Councillor Waldle, that the road, Chalk Road, is a very busy road. It's narrow, bendy and undulating. It has a 50-mile-an-hour speed limit on most of it, and it's highly dangerous. And I think that's a very valid point that Councillor Waldle made. And this is clearly a violation of the Green Belt in spirit as it's intended. And I too will be opposing the application.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm looking round. I've seen nobody else indicating. Oh, Peter.
Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I actually wasn't here in the last one, but I've read the minutes and the agenda. There's 8 existing businesses there. So I'm taking it the businesses, they do travel backwards and forwards to the businesses, and some of them may have customers that travel backwards and forwards. I know we did a big report about 4 or 5 years ago, going out within all the rural areas, and Mepham come up very high with needing social housing, very high. And this is built in which I wouldn't call Greenbelt because it's got industrial units and it's got concrete and buildings. So for me, I think we actually need this. Thank you. Sorry, hi.
Hi. Oh, my mic. Would you like to indicate the question be now put? I've not seen anybody else wants to. And can we be seconded? Seconded. So the recommendation in front of you, and it is given delegated authority to issue planning permission, impose conditions and informative subject to, and you can see that. Those in favour, please indicate. Those are, I'm waiting for that to be confirmed. Yes. So the resolution, the recommendation has been approved. Thank you. We will now move on, if we can, to the second planning. Oh, sorry. Yes, quite rightly. Does anybody now want to leave, slip away and escape? In which case, please do so. Right. Okay. Amanda, in your own time. Okay. Right, ladies and gentlemen, we will now move to 6B, which is Blackthorn Farm, Ruton Road, Mepham. Documents in front of us. Can we have the introduction, please? Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you, Chair. This application seeks planning permission for the demolition of the existing buildings and the erection up to 100 residential dwellings, including affordable housing, with all matters reserved except for the creation of a new access from the A227 South Street. The reserved matters are appearance, landscaping, layout, and scale, which are not being considered within this application. Members should note that this site is the subject of a non-determination planning appeal. This means that the planning inspectorate will determine whether or not this application is granted planning permission in due course. The resolution of planning committee will guide the council's position in relation to the appeal. The application site outlined in red is located on the eastern side of the A227, with Heron Hill Lane to the north. The site is currently accessed from the A227 South Street via an existing tarmacked entrance to the southern part of the site, servicing the existing buildings and uses. The site has an area of approximately 5.4 hectares. To the north of the site is Heron Hill Lane, where there are a number of commercial uses which are lawful. To the east is smaller clusters of detached properties with Little Beachfield Farm directly to the east, which is accessed via a track. To the south of the site is the detached dwelling known as Mitfield House and a row of residential properties along the South Street leading to Culverston Green. To the west are residential properties and the farmstead of Rockley House Farm. Directly north of the site and approximately 70 metres away are the bus stops providing a number of bus services in both directions. This site shows the paddock, sand school and agricultural buildings at the site. The photo on the left is the street scene on the A227 South Street looking north, and the photo on the right is the street scene looking south. This is an aerial view of the site for additional context. Culverston Green Village is to the south. The land use perimeter plan shows the location of residential development in the pink, open space in light green with the landscape buffer in dark green, and access points for both occupiers of the site in yellow and emergency access in purple. This is the substantive points of detail for which planning permission is sought. A number of illustrative plans are provided in various documents. These are only intended to illustrate that the development can meet policy requirements. For example, the Illustrative Development Framework Plan on this slide shows the location of the open space that will be accessible to all members of the public, SUDs, and the potential of layout of the internal roads and housing. The existing access to the south of the site would be stopped up. The proposed central access onto the A227 would be a priority 5.5 metre wide junction with visibility displays and the drop curves with tactile paving for pedestrians. The speed limit along this stretch of the road is 30 miles per hour. Highways England do not object to the proposal subject to conditions being imposed. KCC Highways initially objected to the scheme on the grounds of highway safety and lack of sustainable transport options. There have been ongoing dialogue with KCC Highways to address these concerns involving the LPA and the applicant. This has resulted in KCC proposing contributions to enhance provision of the 308 bus service to increase the sustainability of the site. Should existing funding for the 308 cease, an alternative option is currently being progressed to secure provision of an equivalent service between Gravesend Town Centre and Borough Green, subject to further considerations. In terms of highway safety, the applicant has undertaken further work with KCC Highways, which indicates that they are able to address concerns raised by KCC, which includes safe pedestrian access across White Post Lane and the provision of seating at the school bus stop. These matters, subject to further discussion with KCC Highways, can be addressed via conditions and/or planning obligations. This slide shows the walking distances from the site. The darker blue areas show 400 metres from the site access, the mid blue 800 metres, and the lighter blue show 2 kilometre distances. This demonstrates that the public transport options are within walking distance, with facilities such as the local primary school and nursery and mini market within a 10-minute walk. The application site is located in the grey belt, defined in the MPPF as land which does not contribute to any of the purposes of including land in the green belt, as set out in paragraph 6.44 of the committee report. As explained in paragraph 6.58 of the report, footnote 7 states exclusions to the definition of grey belt, of which only 2 are applicable to the sites, which are the habitat sites and flood risk. As stated in the committee report, the impacts are minimal and does not provide a strong reason for refusing or restricting development. As stated in paragraph 6.44 to 6.49 of the committee report, the site does not strongly contribute to greenbelt purposes A, B or D, which are set out on this slide. Paragraph 155 of the MPPF states that development of homes, commercial and other development in the greenbelt should not be regarded as inappropriate where all the following considerations apply. Utilises greybelt land and does not fundamentally undermine the purpose of the remaining greenbelt in the area. Demonstrates unmet need for the type of development proposed. Would be in a sustainable location and meet the golden rules. This is set out in paragraphs 6.50 to 6.97 of the committee report. The development is not inappropriate development in the greenbelt and is therefore compliant with policy CSO2 of the local plan. Paragraph 156 of the MPPF states that where a major development involving the provision of housing is proposed on land in the Greenbelt, which is subject to a planning application, the following contributions, golden rules, should be made. In this case, the development should provide 50% affordable housing, should provide necessary improvements to local and national infrastructure, and provide new or improved green spaces for the public. In this case, the proposal will provide up to 50 affordable dwellings, which equates to 50% affordable housing. This will be secured through a planning obligations agreement. Improvements to infrastructure, including financial contributions to enhancing the local bus service to improve the site's sustainability, upgrades to pedestrian links through the use of tactile paving on the crossings near the bus stops. The proposal also includes new public open space incorporating areas of natural play. The outline proposals, which consider the principle of development and access, have been assessed in relation to key planning issues, and key concerns have been considered, including those raised by statutory and non-statutory consultees. Sufficient information has been provided to show that vehicular access to and from the site can be safely achieved. The council cannot demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply, and therefore the tilted balance applies. This means permission should be granted unless the adverse impacts significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. The site is considered to be a sustainable location subject to mitigation being secured and is set out within the report. The principle of residential use is considered to be acceptable. This, together with the designation of the site as Greyback land under the MPPF 2024, carries significant weight. While there is loss of agricultural land, this is not considered to outweigh the positive benefits of the scheme. The proposal is therefore considered to be consistent with overarching planning policy objectives to achieve a sustainable development in the borough, meets the requirements of the MPPF when taken as a whole, and where the adverse impacts of the proposal do not significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. The outline proposals are therefore acceptable in principle, and the application is recommended for planning permission as set out in the officer recommendation. The recommendation is set out in full in the committee report. We are seeking clarification on council's position in defending this application at appeal. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I seek comments or seeking clarification or information? Frank, I've seen you.
Thank you, Chair. Just to correct some of the things that have been said there. You was talking about buildings on the site. I went on the site visit. There was no buildings there. There's no buildings on that site whatsoever. You say a number of buses come through there. There's only one bus come through there once an hour. That's not a number of buses. You say the speed limit's 30. Go out there with a radar gun and see them coming through at 50. And that, in my opinion, 100 houses built on that bit of land is an appropriate building. Thank you, Chair.
You know what I'm going to say, but yes, okay. I'm looking around now for points of information or clarification for members of the board. I don't. Lynn?
Thank you, Chair. I wonder if we could go back to the photograph you put up there, and I wondered if you could just clarify what date that was taken, please, with the horse and the that picture there with the horse and the hard standing. When was that taken?
Sorry, I took that last week when there was roadworks there and there was traffic lights, and I took that last week. I walked down the site.
Lynn, you want to come back?
Yeah, I was on the site visit and we didn't go far. I didn't see that. I didn't see it. And as Frank said, I don't recall seeing anything that had got to be demolished, only a few trees.
Okay, thank you. Les.
Once again, we're talking about grey belt land. When we first heard about the concept from the newly elected government, we were told that there might be an old derelict garage that's situated on greenbelt land that would be stupid not to make it ripe for development. So the public thought that was okay, no problem. And now we seem to be looking at anywhere we can to meet our targets on the green belt. I'm coming to the point.
Can I come back? I mean, I let
We've
Frank
said that this is previously developed land. Could you clarify the previous development that makes it grey belt?
Thank you for question.
Thank you, Chair. So the definition of grey belt includes previously developed land and any other land. So it's not strictly just previously developed land. And the officer's explanation of how this meets grey belt, the definition is set out within the report, and I can guide you to the relevant paragraphs if that's required. Thank you, Chair.
Can I first of all apologise to Leslie? I did try and cut you off, but you did come in with a question, and I apologise. Okay, Aaron.
Thank you, Chair. Just to follow up on that point, just in the interest of clarity, so we know exactly what we're dealing with, it feels like we're using a tiny sliver of land and describing it as grey belt in order to then develop masses of green belt. Could you please clarify what percentage of that land has been developed on so far? Thank you.
Thank you. So with regard to what's been developed, obviously you've got the access track to the south, and then you've obviously got the Blackthorn Farm itself with the agricultural buildings, and then you've got the Sand School also within the site area. And the remaining is grazing land for the horses, which is to the north, so the more west of the site. So where Shazad is kindly showing now, that is the development area that has already got the buildings and the Sand School on there. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, follow up, please, Al.
Thank you. I did ask for a rough percentage. I don't mind if you have a guess. What would you say that's less than 5% of that land is developed? Thank you.
It'll be less than 10%, Councillor Elliott. I think it's probably worth just clarifying the officer argument within the report isn't that this is previously development land in its entirety, which is why it meets grey belt tests as set out in the MPPF, as set out within the officer report. It's because the tests which the MPPF require you to, the decision maker to carry out in relation to grey belt are met when the assessment is done. And as set out in the training that members undertook, it was explained the process that needs to be followed. Thank you, Chair.
Peter, do you want to come in?
A bit like Aaron, actually. I'm a bit confused because there's a tiny, tiny piece that's been developed and that we're handing over a whole field for development for a tiny piece in a conservation area of such.
Thank you, Chair. So just to clarify, the site isn't within a conservation area, so that doesn't apply. And in relation to the justification, we're not justifying development of this site based on the previous developed land that already exists. The justification exists on the basis that the wider site meets the government's definition of grey belt, and that assessment is set out within the report. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, colleagues. Now, I suggest we move forward, and I'll just explain how we're going to move forward. We have one speaker for the application, and we have 3 speakers against the application, and the speakers will get 3 minutes. Wait until Councillor Milner comes back. Peter, would you like to try and persuade her? No, I'm not asking you to. Right, thank you. So just to proceed, we'll take the speaker for the application, and then there's 3 speakers against the application. You'll be guided by the lights. You have 3 minutes. When you've got 1 minute left, the light will turn amber. When it turns red, you must stop. You will then be invited to answer questions, if there are any questions, by members of the committee. I'm just going to leave the members of the committee on this particular occasion. Right, thank you. So we're moving to the speaker for the application, which is Andrew Wilford from Esquire Developments. If you'd like to come forward. Again, Andrew, be guided by the lights in front of you. Your time will start whenever you're ready to start.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. My name is Andrew Wilford, Land and Planning Director at Esquire Developments. We fully recognise that members are often required to make difficult and finely balanced decisions, weighing local concerns alongside policy requirements and wider public benefits. We also acknowledge that this proposal has generated a level of public interest, which is entirely understandable where change is proposed. However, we are in the midst of a national housing crisis, and one in which the current government is seeking to rectify by increasing the supply of homes now, especially in areas where housing needs are not being met. This proposal represents a carefully considered and proportionate response to that housing need. The site falls squarely within the new concept of grey belt land, even as a greenfield site. It is well enclosed and adjacent to the existing village of Culverston. The land, used as a private horse paddocks for at least 40 years, does not perform strongly against the greenbelt purposes and can be developed in a sensitive way without undermining the wider openness or function of the countryside. The development would provide for up to 100 new homes, of which 50 homes would be affordable housing, directly addressing identified local needs. Affordable housing opportunities in rural areas such as Culverston are exceptionally limited, and without schemes of this nature, local families, younger people and key workers are often forced to move away from the communities they grow up in. This proposal helps to address that imbalance and supports the creation of more inclusive and sustainable rural communities. The scheme would be delivered by an award-winning and very local SME house builder. SME house builders play a critical role in housing delivery, and we focus on the delivery of good quality homes rather than land banking, meaning planning permissions translate into homes on the ground more quickly. In real terms, that means earlier occupation, earlier contribution to housing supply, and earlier delivery of affordable homes. The proposals have been shaped carefully in response to their surrounding. Landscape buffers, retained features, and new green infrastructure are integral to the scheme, ensuring that development is well contained and respects the character of the area. Technical matters, including highways, drainage, ecology, and biodiversity, have been robustly assessed, with appropriate mitigation and net gains secured. The golden rules are fully adhered to, and substantial improvements to the local bus service and upgrades to the local footpaths mean day-to-day services can be accessed in sustainable ways. Members, this is not just an opportunistic proposal. This is a sustainable proposal being brought forward by a local SME house builder, delivering good quality market and affordable housing under the newly defined grey belt policy, in an area that is not meeting its housing needs. The scheme is exactly what the current government is seeking to come forward to build a sufficient supply of new homes, and exactly why changes to the planning system have been made. We understand these are difficult times, particularly where the authority faces housing pressure. But when assessed in the round, the public benefits of this scheme clearly and demonstrably outweigh any limited harm.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right, colleagues on the committee, I've seen Frank, not seen anybody else yet. Frank.
Thank you, Chair. You've mentioned affordable housing over and over during your presentation. What do you consider affordable housing? Because what you consider may not be what other people consider. Sorry, I've got the mic on.
I mean, it's a good question. It's a question we often get asked, but we can only go by the definition of what sits within the planning framework. But 50%, half of the homes, will be offered to a registered provider. That registered provider will be then offering those homes to people on the local housing register. So they're the contribution of the affordable homes.
Sorry, Frank, are you carrying on?
Saying that they're going to be affordable houses for the local residents. There's been 2 or 3 developments, the police station being one of them, where they said it was going to go to local residents. None of them ever did.
Thank you, Chair. Just going back on Frank's affordable housing, will the houses be built to the same standards as the other houses being built and have the same fittings inside, or will it be a bit ghettoised? Thank you.
Yep, we build all of our affordable homes design blind effectively, so there's no change in materials. You wouldn't be able to tell at all from the outside that it's an affordable product, and it's something that we found if you successfully integrate and rather than turning your back on the affordable housing within a development, you actually integrate it within the existing development. You find that it's much better integrated into the development, and the people that live there, the community thrives as a result. So we absolutely make sure that there's no decrease in quality at all in the affordable product, because we know that actually in the long term that benefits the community that lives there.
Thank you. Do you want to come back, Peter?
Thank you. Just another one. You were saying all the reports you've done. Have you done a study on the traffic? Obviously, they're saying there's going to be over 100 properties. I mean, I don't know if you're aware that road has collapsed before. It bottles down at the bottom. So how are you going to mitigate the traffic getting out on that if it's just one way out? Thank you.
Yeah, we've done a full transport assessment. I mean, I live fairly local. Play rugby at Bargain. My nephews go to Culverston Primary School, so I know the road very well. We've done a full transport assessment. We've assessed the speeds of the road. We've assessed the impact on the traffic, and all's been found to be acceptable from a technical specification standard. So we've fully tested that, and that's been assessed by KCC Highways, and nothing's been found that suggests any extensive upgrades are necessary for that particular stretch of road other than what we're proposing.
One more, yes. No.
Personal. You said your family come from Culverston. What is your personal opinion if that was being built 100 houses in your village and the impact it'd have on your children growing up as well, getting into local schools? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, change is inevitable. It's necessary. The population is growing. We do need new houses. We need to ensure that the future generations have the ability to live in places where they grow up. And unfortunately, what we've seen in the rural part of Gravesham over many number of years, because of the strict regime with Greenbelt and the fact that the local plan hasn't yet got into place, is that there's been such little development in the rural areas that actually it's resulted in this built up pressure. So from my perspective, I would be happy if 100 homes were built in Culverston.
Aaron, do you want to?
Thank you. Sorry. I've been led to believe this application is alongside or adjacent to ancient woodland. And the Forestry Commission requires consultation to the Secretary of State before granting permission for development that affects ancient woodlands. I haven't seen whether it's clear in the papers whether this mandatory consultation has been done. Are you able to clarify that?
I'm not entirely. I'll have to leave it to the officers as to whether that particular consultee was consulted, but Natural England have commented on the application, but we don't actually impact on the ancient woodland. Whilst we're next to, the standard advice from Natural England is to provide for a 15-metre buffer, which we do, and therefore we followed the standard advice, and therefore there is probably unlikely the need to consult on that party, because we're not removing any ancient woodland, we're not affecting it in any regard, because the ancient woodland, actually this plan's quite useful. You can see the yellow area there on that parameter plan, that shows the ancient woodland buffer. So the ancient woodland sits where that dot effectively sits. So we've actually got no built form going anywhere near the ancient woodland. In fact, what's next to the ancient woodland is the area of open space. So it's very well protected in respect of any built form. It's quite substantially more than the 15 metres, which is the standard advice. It's probably more like 50 metres in reality. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm looking around at members of the committee, and then I'm looking to see if any other councillors. Sorry, Leslie, do you want to come in?
I think my question's been partly answered, but I'll ask it anyway. You said the purpose of the development is to meet the housing need and to preserve the openness of the countryside. Can you explain to me how building 100 houses preserves the openness of the countryside?
Yeah, so what we have to do when we're bringing forward development is we have to undertake the fine balance between delivering houses in the right areas and then also maintaining that character. And what the green belt test and the grey belt test look at is does the development of this site undermine the wider strategic objective of the green belt and the countryside in this location? And essentially we're in an area where this relatively small parcel of land, in the wider concept of the amount of land that's available and still protected under greenbelt and the countryside, it doesn't undermine that functional purpose. So, for instance, you can see there's built form that is located north of the development already. So, in terms of encroachment towards Mepham or Mepham Green, we're not going any further than existing built form already exists. Likewise, to the east of the development, you can see there's a whole row of houses that sit already to the east of the development, and therefore we're not going any further into the countryside than existing houses already sit, and likewise to the south. So the site is actually enclosed on 4 sides by built form, and therefore that's why we argue, or we say, that this horse paddocks is ultimately not going to undermine the wider countryside, which actually sits further beyond the houses that you can see in this image.
Thank you. I did say I'd open it up to other councillors. Shane, what you got?
Sorry. Thanks very much, Chair. Just a quick question. You've made yourself sort of a big some bones about being different from other developers. My question is on why you've gone for non-determination so quickly from a turnaround, given the consultation closed in December. It's not actually it's not a long turnaround, really. So why have you gone for non-determination if you are so convinced that the housing needs and everything will be met under the emerging local plan? Why not wait a month and test that? Because the Reg 19 will be finished by the end of the month with the consultation. So why have you gone so early and so quickly here if you're different from other developers?
I think ultimately we take the view that the need is here and now. The council, it's difficult to get a local plan in place. We understand the complexities surrounding bringing forward development, especially where there is wider greenbelt release expected, and therefore we've taken the view that whilst the local plan is still emerging, we don't know when that could become adopted. There's still a long way to go. There's still an examination to go through, and we feel that there's the need for the housing is now and has been for a number of years now in the authority. So that's why we've gone for non-determination at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Wilford. You may resume your seat. Oh, sorry. Peter, do you want to come back?
I just wanted clarification on how many properties are actually in Culverson at the moment, please, if we know.
Do we know?
Sorry, that's not information that we have before us.
Okay. John, did I see you?
On the issue of sustainability and bus routes, they've been mentioned a number of times. And also in the paperwork, you're going to make a contribution to the buses, and that was indicated on the sheet earlier. The bus route from Vigo Element to Gravesend goes from about 9:15 to about 6:20 of an evening. That's it. And the buses run roughly 1 to 2 hours when they're not cancelled. I wouldn't call that particularly sustainable. And therefore, the contribution you're going to make, obviously, I'd be interested to know how big is that contribution what would that reflect to in the number of additional buses? And for how many years would that contribution last in order to make the bus route a sustainable route?
Yeah, thank you. So that the contribution to the bus is linked to a number of other developments that are being put forward along the A227 corridor. And essentially what KCC Public Transport have asked for is for a contribution which amounts, off the top of my head, it's sort of £2.5 million effectively, to run for 5 years. And what that will do is it will enhance the existing 308 service. So it will increase frequency. So there'll be a bus route every half an hour. It will extend the service of that bus to cover commuter hours. So it will go earlier in the morning and carry on later in the evening. And it will also cover on Sunday service as well. So actually the enhancements that are being proposed as a result of not just this development, but other developments that are known to be coming forward in the area as part of the local plan as well, will actually deliver quite a large suite of enhancements to that existing service. And in fact, that will probably deliver a very good bus service for what is effectively a rural area. And that is one of the objectives of the Golden Rules, and one of the tasks of Greybelt is to actually ensure that those public transport enhancements actually do take place. So we've been speaking with not only KCC but other developments along that corridor that are being considered by the council to ensure that each development then subsequently pays its way. So and we need to remember as well, as given that we are in the rural area, that the NPPF paragraph 110 does distinguish the difference between urban and rural in terms of the sustainable options, but effectively a bus every half an hour extended to commuter hours and on a Sunday service is exactly what this government, I think, is seeking to improve with development sites coming forward of this nature.
John, I see you want to come back, but quickly, please.
With respect, I asked what is your contribution, because I appreciate everybody else may be saying we're chipping money if we get our scheme, but that assumes all those other schemes will get permitted. And if they don't, then does that mean your contribution falls away to nothing? Or does that mean there is a contribution? And my question was, what's your contribution? Not what everybody else is going to be doing, if indeed they do it.
Yeah, so it's prorated out. So our contribution, which is still to be agreed with KCC and the final figure, but it's around about £2,400 per dwelling as we sit here today. So that will be the contribution that we'd make. And as I say, we're still discussing the final figure, but it will be around that with KCC. Yeah.
Right, Jordan, do you want to come in?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. We're being told tonight, again, that this is Greybelt land and not Greenbelt land. But again, I can't understand that. I just cannot get my head around how this is Greenbelt, how it's not Greenbelt. Earlier on, Councillor Elliott asked the question to our officers about what percentage of this land has been previously developed. And I think that's fundamentally a really important question, because that's being used to justify why this is Greybelt versus Greenbelt. Do you have a definitive answer for the committee as to what percentage of this land has been developed already? And do you have anything more to say to add weight to your case that this is Greybelt and not Greenbelt?
Yeah, thank you. I don't have an answer to what percentage is covered by built form, but what I can absolutely categorically answer is the site does not have to be brownfield or pre-DL to be considered Greybelt. That's a fundamental principle of what the NPPF is saying. So the Greenbelt test to satisfy whether it's Greybelt, it could be a brownfield, it could be a greenfield site. It's about the contribution it makes in the setting that it's in, and the three tests. Being whether it's next to a built-up area, we're in a village, that's not considered a built-up area in the context of Greenbelt. Whether it merges to another town, I've already explained that it doesn't go anywhere nearer Mepham than the existing development, and whether it's against a historic town, which Culverston is not an historic town. So they're the tests that you establish whether a site, whether it's brownfield or greenfield, is considered to be Greybelt or not. And I think it's quite an often misconception, and I understand the point being made, I think, by Councillor Hills about when the original guise of Greybelt, what that meant in terms of being a petrol station and those small brownfield sites. But what's come through in the final drafting of the NPPF is something that does include greenfield sites, and it is actually a response in order to try and deliver the 1.5 million homes that this government is actually trying to achieve. So yeah, it's not the first committee I've been to where there's a misconception that brownfield equals grey belt and greenfield can't qualify as grey belt at all. That's not how the NPPF is framed.
Peter.
I'm just trying to work out how Calveston, the development in Calveston, does an impact on Mepham in the building, because obviously the kids that live there are going to go to Mepham, and that's going to be a massive impact.
In terms of primary school, I mean secondary. Obviously, there's Mepham School. There's also schools down in Borough Green as well, which are within the catchment here. So the school children will go either way. There's obviously a primary school at Calverton. There's a primary school at Vigo. There's 2 primary schools in Mepham. So we're not saying that children won't go there, but this is a very typical scenario of the rural areas, particularly across Kent, where one village relies perhaps on another villages for its services. So, whilst Calverton might not have a GP surgery, Mepham does. And therefore, this is a very typical, and the NPPF recognises that these communities rely on each other's services to actually deliver and allow people to live and work in their normal day.
Frank, I've seen you, but be brief now. I mean,
yeah, I just want to follow on from what Peter's said, Chair. He mentioned the schools and doctors. The doctors have already stated they cannot take any more patients. The schools, that you say there's 2 primary schools, I only know of 1, but that's besides the point. But they have said they can't take any more pupils. So where do you expect all these people to go to?
Yeah, so we obviously pay a Section 106 contributions to the Primary Care Trust, so that they, we hand that money over, and if the Primary Care Trust doesn't subsequently spend that on local GP surgery, then that's unfortunately something that's outside of our control. In terms of the schools, again, KCC education team review over pupil yields. They understand the expected yields over future years. They look at it very carefully. There's a well-trodden route in terms of Section 106 requests required. And they've sought secondary contributions from this particular development. So, it is looked at, it is tested thoroughly by KCC, and it's nothing we challenged in terms of those Section 106 contributions requested. We're happy to pay those.
I am going to let you escape at this point, and I apologise. We've kept you rather longer than most speakers do get called. Many thanks. Right, we will now take speakers against the application, starting with Mr. James Ferrin. If you'd like to come forward again, I think you'll recognise you have 3 minutes and be guided by the lights. Thank you.
Good evening, my name's James Ferrin and I live in Calverton. In April, members received grey belt training from Trowse and Hamlins. That training confirmed that strongly contributes has no binding legal definition and is a matter of subjective planning judgment. Members are not required to accept officers' conclusions. It also confirmed that footnote 7, covering irreplaceable habitats and heritage assets of archaeological interest, excludes any land from grey belt status. The site is adjacent to ancient woodland, within an archaeological notification area, and within Groundwater Source Protection Zone 3. Those are precisely the constraints your own solicitors highlighted. Your training also identified 2 appeal cases where land was accepted as grey belt, but permission was still refused because the site failed the sustainability test under paragraph 155C. KCC Highways has itself concluded in its consultation response that the bus provision here is insufficient. If sustainability fails, grey belt fails. Officers argue that even if Greybelt fails, very special circumstances exist. But their own supplementary report acknowledges this site makes a significant contribution to the Greenbelt purpose, 143C, safeguarding the countryside from encroachment and that development would urbanise it. The VSC case rests almost entirely on housing need and affordable housing. Those benefits exist at virtually every Greenbelt application. If housing need alone constitutes very special circumstances, the Greenbelt in Gravesham has no meaningful protection at all. The flooding risk to existing residents is also unresolved. The site sits at the head of a valley slope. KCC, as lead local flood authority, has confirmed the drainage strategy relies on soakways into chalk that is unsuitable for infiltration, that ground investigations have not been carried out, and that runoff coefficients in the submitted model are too low. Replacing open paddock with this development will increase surface water runoff into the Culverston Valley, which has flooded with life-threatening consequences before. Section 106 is not yet finalised. Drainage is deferred to reserve matters. Existing residents are left exposed. I'm asking you to advise the inspector that this council would be minded to refuse. The Greybelt Fund is legally vulnerable. The VSC case sets a dangerous precedent. The sustainability test is not met on the evidence of your own highway authority, and the flooding risk to existing residents is unresolved. Tell the inspector that. It's time to do the right thing, and it's to do what the law and your own legal training support. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ferrin. I'm looking around at members of the committee. I see no indication. I'm looking at other members. No, thank you. You may.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can I now ask for Roger Collings from Mepham Parish Council? Again, be guided by the lights from when you start talking.
Thank you, Chair. Hello, my name is Councillor Roger Collings. I am speaking for Mepham Parish Council, or MPC, in objection to application 2025-0802, Blackthorn Farm. MPC has submitted a formal objection. I will focus on 3 issues where the evidence does not, in our view, support the officer recommendation. First, highway safety and accessibility. Access is not a reserved matter. Members are therefore being asked to take a position on the A227 access now. The applicant's own transport assessment records 85th percentile speeds of 39.1 mph northbound and 37.8 mph southbound, above the 30 limit. KCC Highways has also raised concerns about visibility, lighting and pedestrian infrastructure. The proposal relies heavily on alternatives to the car. Yet the same transport assessment shows the main 308 bus has only 7 weekday services from Ridley Turning between 10:04 and 6:31. The other listed services are largely school services. KCC Highways questions how the site can be considered sustainable given limited bus provision. Then the S106 appendix shows the bus contribution is still to be agreed. Members should consider whether the limited transport options would leave most future residents relying on cars, adding further pressure to the already constrained A227. Second, Greenbelt and local character. This is not a small infill site. It is Greenbelt site outside the defined settlement boundary on the edge of Culverston Green. The supplementary report acknowledges that the proposal would urbanise the countryside. Up to 100 dwellings would materially alter this site's character. MPC asks members to give real weight to that harm before accepting the applicant's Greybelt case. Third, ecology and biodiversity. The site contains habitats of ecological value and lies close to the ancient woodland. KCC biodiversity confirms the proposal would result in the loss of approximately 2.41 hectares of lowland meadow, a Gravesham priority habitat. The applicant's biodiversity net gain material also shows a provisional on-site net loss of 17.23 area habitat units, equivalent to minus 40.45%. MPC is concerned that mitigation, off-site BNG, lighting and long-term management all depend heavily on later controls. Members are not deciding the application in the usual way tonight because it has gone to appeal for non-determination. but the committee is being asked to agree the council's position for that appeal. For the reasons stated, Mepham Parish Council respectfully ask members not to support the officer recommendation. Instead, we ask the council to defend refusal at appeal because the highway, greenbelt and ecological concerns remain unresolved. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I'm looking around for members' questions. Can I ask one? You're elected representative of Mepham Council. Would you not be attracted by the idea of affordable houses or houses which could be made available to people who otherwise would not be able to afford to live in the Mepham area? Maybe the sons, daughters of your residents?
I would be attracted to logical allocations. This is not logical. Thank you.
Sorry, could you just explain that a little more? I'm a bear of little brain. How do you mean it's not allocated? How should it be allocated?
The infrastructure here is shocking. The A227, there's already admission of speeding. There needs to be, I believe, more consultation with the public over all of this. I feel like if I was to answer this question properly, I'd be sidetracking and it wouldn't be very relevant. But this is not the site that I would agree with. There are multiple sites in Mepham at present, and I think we need to just be very considerate of where we allocate these sites and where they're most appropriate, should we say.
So thank you, Chairman. I just want to pick up on the point that you made about dependability on cars, because in the opening summary, it was suggested that all of the amenities to make this site viable is within a 10-minute walk. Now, having walked through that area myself, that's not my understanding of amenities in the local area. And I'm just wondering, as a parish councillor, if that's your view, that indeed the amenities are not within a 10-minute walk, particularly on unlit roads here in the winter months.
Without a car, there is nothing within locality. I've heard, for example, it's close to Mepham Station. It's an uphill bike ride all the way from Mepham Station to Colston. Yeah, thank you.
Right, thank you, sir. You may escape, Mr. Collins. Thank you for your contribution. That then brings us to the third speaker against the application. That's Caroline Halfpenny. Thank you. I think you probably know the procedure now. Yep. Okay, off you go.
I've lived in Hook Green for 35 years. I represent hundreds of concerned residents in the borough who cannot understand how building on greenbelt land is a sustainable approach to dealing with the housing crisis. I object to this outline planning proposal as the site sits within the greenbelt and the Mepham Downs landscape character area. No need has been established for housing here. The emerging local plan states brownfield first. This site is not part of GBC's plan. Quotes from the plan: our long-term vision is rooted in a brownfield first approach. We have sought to minimise the impact of growth in the rural area. Another statement was, the development sites are those that landowners have offered up for inclusion. This plot was never offered up. How can residents understand why this land is being considered for development? What is the point of all of these documents if we do not adhere to them? For example, the CPRE state that the State of the Greenbelt report says encourages housing to be directed towards urban and brownfield sites near to where we work and the amenities that we need. But I understand this land may be considered grey and not green. In the supporting document, the ecological assessment asks the question, are there any areas which are protected? It says yes in the box. It is located within the green belt. The Kent Downs National Landscape is approximately 1.36 kilometres to the east, and the term green belt is used in this report, not grey belt. The Medway Gap and North Downs Biodiversity Opportunity Area is 300 metres to the east of the site. It contains significant blocks of nationally and internationally important woodland, including lowland beech and new woodland and chalk grassland, both UK Biodiversity Action Plan priority habitats, identified as the most threatened habitats requiring conservation under the UK Biodiversity Action Plan. Adjacent to the site is the ancient woodland, providing a stable ecosystem of plants and animals. MPPF, I read, said, development resulting in the loss or deterioration of irreplaceable habitats, such as ancient woodland, should be refused unless there is a wholly exceptional reason. The soil is pretty much undisturbed in this site and has a hugely diverse web of interrelated species. It appears a 15-metre barrier is considered appropriate protection, but a path is proposed through this buffer. Removal of the hedgerows will take away a safe transport corridor for wildlife sheltering, nesting sites and foraging. Many species, such as glowworms and 8 species of bats, will suffer. No hedge, no food. Basically, the connections between the habitats will be lost forever. In conclusion, we have the opportunity here to future-proof our natural landscape and protect the heritage of Kent, the Garden of England, by refusing this application on the grounds that it is in the current plan as Greenbelt.
Thank you. Timed perfectly well.
Thank you.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you very much. That's the first I've heard of there being bats in the area. I was just wondering whether you were aware of in this application, whether there's been an ecological study on bats so far or anything like that.
I got the report, the information from the ecological assessment, and in there it asks that question. And that's where it mentioned the Medway Gap and the and all the other information. So it said, yeah, 8 bats, glowworms, different types of snakes, possibility of badgers, lots of hedgehogs.
Thank you. I'm looking around, colleagues. I've just taken members of the committee, first of all. No, Shane.
Thank you very much. There's a point of clarification that's needed for consideration. The local plan, emerging local plan, was referenced as in there. It isn't in there and wasn't offered up in there. So it might be for officers to clarify this as well, but it wasn't in any part of the regulation in this. So this is a standalone thing. So it's not referenced in the local plan. It's not there, therefore wasn't offered up. So it might be worth clarifying that for people that it's not in there. It's not in the emerging one. It's not in Reg 19. And while I appreciate the reports in there, it was referenced in the question. But there's a reason why it wasn't offered up, or it's not in inclusion. It wasn't offered up. It was not there. So it is a standalone application. It isn't anything that's been considered previously. I'm sure that can be clarified one way or another.
My understanding, I'm looking at Shazad to agree with me, but any developer could pick any site, whether it's offered up or not in local plan, and declare that could be developed. And I would imagine that's what's happened here.
Thank you, Chair. So Blackthorn Farm is a site that was submitted as part of the emerging local plan process, and it's probably covered in the strategic housing land availability assessment, but it's not a site that has been brought through into the Regulation 19 consultation document. But as set out in the officer report, this application needs to be determined in accordance with the current development plan and material considerations. In light of that, any applicant, whether that's a landowner, agent acting on their behalf, etc., is entitled to submit a planning application, and it's for this local authority, in its role as the local planning authority, to consider that application on its own merits. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'm looking around, colleagues. I see no other questions, so you may escape. Many thanks. That's very good. So, colleagues, we now have an open discussion where you may comment on the merits of the proposal and the recommendation. Do I see anybody who wants to comment? Councillor Scollard, and then I've seen Councillor Hill.
Thank you, Chair. It just seems an awful lot, 100 properties in a field that's, as far as I can see, is Greenbelt. But I'm still a bit amazed why there hasn't been no consideration, because it is a village, and what is the definition of a village? Why there's no consideration of the amount of properties that are already in that village and what the impact of another 100 houses coming into that village has?
I'm now come on to Councillor Hills. Did I see you?
Yes, I just wanted to make a general point. You did ask for comment. It seems to me that we have Greenbelt established for some years now in order to protect land for the reasons that we're all fully aware of. But because of housing targets and housing needs and the pressure of houses, we seem to be stretching points to the absolute maximum to create grey belt and create reasons for saying grey belt and not green belt, and for building on the green belt for one reason or another that's almost hard to discern. And I imagine, unfortunately, that this is the position throughout the whole country. I don't believe we meet the green belt criteria. I don't believe we meet sustainability. But here we are, and I don't know of many such applications that get refused. So gradually and inexorably, we're concreting over the whole countryside, regrettably, and I shall be voting against. And I hope the council would oppose this, but I've got my doubts.
Right. Thank you, Councillor. I see Councillor Burden and then Councillor Mockley Cox. Councillor Burden.
Thank you. Can I first say, before commenting on the thing generally, I've been to many of these meetings over the years, and I do have a natural bias, it's got to be said, to support officer opinions on reports and recommendations when I think they're right. I think that's the key thing, when I think they're right. And I would commend both the proposer and the objectors tonight for the quality of their submissions they put in. I think it's unusual to sit here and listen to objectors and proposers actually know the facts of what they're saying and answer questions in the detail they did, even when being challenged on the point. So congratulations, very unusual. That being said, coming specifically to this site, and I think that's the important thing, all these sites have to be considered individually. There's no one single rule to all the sites, particularly when we start looking at grey belt, green belt, brownfield sites and the definitions around them. I accept the fact that all greyfield sites are effectively greenfield sites, but greenfield is not, there is not a way of saying because it's greenfield you can't build on it. There are ways of building on greenfield. It can be previously developed land, it can be brownfield site, it can be greyfield site if the interpretation is taken down that road of it being a greyfield site. It becomes eligible for consideration. It doesn't mean the application itself should or would be permitted. It still needs to be considered on its merits. And I think the issue for me is this greyfield. Well, we're relying on an interpretation, a professionally given interpretation, I must say, of guidance from government and footnotes from government. There's no law as such. We're interpreting something, it's judgment of something, and it's an opinion. And to my mind, the opinion of the members who are deciding this tonight, of which I'm not one, because I'm not a voting member, the opinion of members tonight are as equally valid as anybody else's. And to that end, I would ask that members refuse this particular application. My reasoning is that I don't think this is a viable site. It doesn't stack up as being sustainable. The argument on the bus service would be valid if that payment over the 5-year period was being made in its entirety or was able to be demonstrated was being contributed by all the other people who agreed. The reality is that the contribution being made on this side, and thank you for being so frank on the value being put in, a substantial amount of money, don't get me wrong, but £250,000 is 5% of the total bill over 5 years. And if you're talking about £5 million, I think is the figure that was mentioned, it's a relatively small amount of money. And I think that doesn't pay for a bus service for 5 years. So I'm very worried that the sustainability argument stacks up on that. If you take away the buses, everything's then on the roads. There is a local school. I've known that one there for years. There is a senior school down in Mepham, but you've got to go by bus or car to get there. You wouldn't sensibly go by bicycle or walk it. I know an old friend of mine used to walk from Vigo to Mepham. It's not recommended. I wouldn't recommend it, but it's not really a sustainable way of travelling. And I think if you also think about it in the context of you're coming off that site, it is green. It's got a small little paddock area, but over all the years I've ever known that site, it's had horses on there, and it's green. It's green belt. It's agricultural. It's not. I can't see it being greyfield. So I think every site being looked in its own merits, you would on those bases turn it down. I know we can't talk about Reg 19, but it has been referred to tonight. And it's not really of a substantial nature. But I'm wondering whether this is coming this early because Reg 19 hasn't quite gone the full passage. That will be done by the end of the month. The coincidence of timing is unfortunate. This isn't within that Reg 19 output. Other sites are. That's where the other money may all come from. But at the moment, it can't be demonstrated it's there. So it's not sustainable. And if it's not sustainable, it doesn't meet the test. And therefore, it's not greyfield. Therefore, it flips back to being pure greenfield. And if it's pure greenfield or greenbelt, alongside important agricultural use, ground conditions, trees, etc., would it be a site we'd release for housing? Probably the answer is no. So I'd hope members are turning down tonight. Thank you, Mayor.
Shane?
You okay? Okay.
Sorry.
So yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Frank and Samir had indicated, Chair. I'm happy to give way to the members of the committee.
I'll take. I've seen you two. Then I'll come back to members, and then I'll.
Thank you very much, Chair. Like the leader, I'm asking the committee to go against this. A series of knots. It isn't grey belt. It doesn't meet the definition. It's an important thing to remember that members decide, officers advise, and that's exactly what it is. The leader called it opinions, advice. It could also be used. It is advice, and it is for members to decide. I agree with the leader. It isn't sustainable. There's a reason it's not included in Reg 19. It is not sustainable. It was removed for not being sustainable. It was not in a location that met other parts of the MPPF. And in fact, it actually, I would argue, is contrary to the MPPF paragraph 154, where it says in paragraph C, the development needs to be in a sustainable location, particular reference to 110 and 115. This is not a sustainable location, requires significant investment to even reach partial sustainability in that, which is not there. It is an island on its own. I was quite taken, Chair, by the comment from Councillor Elliott, actually, as others have alluded to, about some part of this may be grey belt, but there seems to be a lot weighing on what is possibly part of it, and then the rest of it is sort of swallowed up by what part of it may be grey belt, and the rest of the site is allocated therein. I think a lot of what has been put forward in the paper is very subjective. It is advice. It's subjective advice, though, and members can make the decision on their own because it is exactly that, just advice. I think there are very clear material considerations that can be refused. There is no such thing as sort of an accumulative effect. Each application, as we're told so very often, must be decided on their merits. It's not about the rest of the developments or anything else in the local plan or anything that may be coming through. Each application is decided on this merit. It is decided as an island on itself, and it's got to stand or fall on its own merits. I suggest, Chair, that it hasn't met those requirements. And if it had, I joined the lead on the curiosity of the timing. I wondered if actually it had, with full local plan in place, would be considered for recommendation for putting forward for approval, even though it's been non-determined, if actually it was fully local planned. So I would ask the committee to go against it on those bases, and thank you to the members of the public that have kindly given their time this evening as well.
Thank you. I've seen Frank and then Smith. Frank.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mentioned it before about the doctors and the schools can't cope with any more houses being built. But apart from that, South Eastern Water Company have said they can't supply houses with water. Now, if one water company is running out of water to be able to supply the houses, it won't be long before the others are as well. So, you know, unless we get this proper infrastructure in place, there's no point in building the houses. Or are we going to tell residents that are coming into these houses, tough luck? Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Jassel, do you want?
Thank you. Don't really want to go over the old points about the infrastructure and, you know, the sustainability of this site, which I think it's clear on both sides of the chamber tonight that we're seeming to share those concerns with the local residents. But one thing I will say, I think, which is echoing some of the other councillors tonight, the cynic in me raises the point that the fact is we're going to have a lot of sites coming up, and we can't, you know, it's not a material consideration, but it's something to be considered. We're going to have a lot of sites coming up with Reg 19 very, very shortly, where we're going to have many, many sort of difficult discussions, and the questions of housing needs and putting more homes and more affordable housing will be addressed then. I think this is just simply an application whereby it's trying to kind of beat the process and get in, you know, through the back door, when we're going to be having number of, you know, if we didn't have Reg 19, you know, turning up in the next few weeks or so, we may have looked at this slightly differently, but we know we're on the eve of that being published, you know, in full, and those considerations which are going to need to be made then. So I don't think there's a desperate rush now for us to push this through to try and, you know, accommodate affordable housing, you know, on a clearly what is a greenbelt site. So for that reason, and some of the others before, I won't be supporting this tonight. Thank you.
Councillor Hills.
Councillor Burden referred several times to greenfield sites and green belt sites. I think it's important to, at risk of sounding pedantic, that there is quite a distinction between a greenfield site and a green belt site. I thought I'd just make that point. I would also like to say that I entirely agree with Councillor Burden that the speakers here put forward their case extremely well. They did their homework. They were very clear and comprehensive, and all credit to them. I think they're to be commended for doing so. Thank you.
Thank you. I see no other speakers. I will make my point of view. I mean, I, along with a number of councillors, visited the site. And as far as I could see, it was a pony field, and had been a pony field for a very long period of time. I'm not sure what that actually provides in terms of quality for the local environment, but I am aware that there will be pressure, and anybody listening to Kent News will hear of developments, which substantially bigger developments of this that are happening throughout Kent, and will indeed be coming possibly in our area as well. And all I can say is that with this development comes affordable homes and environment improvements. That is mandated. That is government policy. And there's something to be said for that, particularly, if you live in an area where your children cannot afford your housing. I think there is some merit in diversity. I saw the site. I could see absolutely no problem. It's contained, it's self-contained. I could see no reason why you couldn't put that number of houses there with the environmental improvements. And therefore, I actually will support it, because somewhere along the line, although we all want development on brownfield sites, and I represent an area, a ward, where I've been campaigning for brownfield sites for over 30 years and their development, and developers don't use it. I've also campaigned for providing affordable homes and diverse multicultural communities of all ages. And therefore, I think this is an opportunity on a small scale, and I think it should have been perhaps welcomed by local representatives, but I will vote for it. But I accept what I'm hearing from the rest of members. Thank you. Having said that, shall I ask, if there's no other speakers, shall the question be put? I've seen it proposed and seconded. So the recommendations is before us, but for reasons set out in the report, officer's conclusion for permission be granted subject to conditions. Those in favour of that proposal? And those against the proposal? Okay, so I understand that to be 5 against, 4 for. So the proposal. And we will need for reasons for refusal. Would somebody like to come up with reasons for refusal, please?
Too many
Peter.
properties in the village. Too many new developments in the village. It has massive impacts on the whole of the community. Doctors, schools, highways, everything. I can't see it improving the environment. It's actually going to impact on it. Cars, everything. So definitely not.
So the size of the development. Okay, any other reasons?
I could add, just using the council's own judgments, that encroachment into the countryside. I'm not sure if this was a material consideration, but in the Greenbelt study, the council had said it's moderate to high harm on that land. It's an unsustainable location and it's encroachment into the countryside.
I'll take it only from the committee.
No. The reason I was somewhat flabbergasted when you were asking for reasons, you could almost write a dissertation about reasons why this is an inappropriate development. I think just to say it's an inappropriate overdevelopment is suffice, and if need be, we can elaborate on the content of the minutes of this evening's meeting.
Thank you, Chair. So as members will know, the report addresses very special circumstances. If you disagree with the officer view that the site constitutes grey belt, which you clearly have done, so am I to take it that you disagree that the very special circumstances exist for this inappropriate development to come forward?
Right, are we comfortable then with the disagreeing on special circumstances?
Technically be a vote, really.
Should there?
Yes.
Happy to take a lead if you need a vote. Happy for it to be a vote.
Yeah, there should be a vote on the reasons for refusal. The reasons for refusal have been put by members, and then there should be a vote on those reasons.
Right, I'm still not certain I know exactly the reasons. Can somebody tell me?
Thank you, Chair. So the reasons for refusal I have is that the increased development results in unsustainable demand on local services. That is encroachment into the countryside, which results in moderate to high harm. That sustainability is an issue. And members have also stated that very special circumstances haven't been demonstrated.
Right, shall we put that to a vote? Those in favour of those objections, please indicate.
Yeah, that's 5.
Okay.
Anyone against those reasons for refusal?
Nobody. Right. Right. Shall I suggest we might take a 5-minute comfort stop, which allows members who don't want to stay and see the rest of the items to escape? It's madness. Oh, Right then, colleagues. Now we come to the controversial part of the evening. We are now looking at item 6C, which is land at 7 to 39 Rose Avenue. I suppose I should declare an interest, but I am a ward councillor for that area, but I don't think I will speak on that matter at all. So can we have an introduction, please? Ade?
Thank you, Chair. So this application, the description is for the demolition of the existing residential buildings on the site and the erection of 29 new affordable homes with associated vehicular parking and landscaping. So here we have the site location plan. The site is outlined in red. It's located on the northern side of Rose Avenue and it has an area of approximately 0.4 hectares. It's currently occupied by 11 buildings, which are organised in a C shape around a communal amenity space. The site is surrounded by residential properties to the south, east and west, and to the north of the site is the Riverside Community Facility. Rochester Road is located to the west of the site and it offers a number of local amenities, whilst the Gravesham Town Centre is approximately 2 kilometres northwest of the site. So image 1 on the screen shows the flank elevation of number 7 Rose Avenue. So that property is to be retained. And number 9 Rose Avenue is in the background. It's one of a semi-detached pair that will be demolished. Image 2 shows the existing maisonettes from Rose Avenue. They're also to be demolished. Image 3 is the properties to the east, semi-detached pair with the maisonettes at the back. They're all to be demolished. Image 4 is taken from within the garden of number 15 Rose Avenue, and that shows the community centre in the background. Image 5 is taken within the rear garden of number 39, and it shows the rear elevation of number 41 Rose Avenue, which is a neighbouring site, and the site plan at the bottom shows the location that each of those photos above are taken from. So these are just some additional photos showing the site from different points. And here we have an aerial photo of the site, and you can see the sort of C shape that I mentioned earlier of the existing buildings. So this is a plan extract which shows the proposed site layout. The 2-storey blocks will be positioned towards the front of the site with frontages along Rose Avenue, whilst the 3-storey buildings will be located to the rear. So these are the proposed elevations of the 2-storey blocks, Block A and Block B. And these are elevations of Block C, which is positioned to the northeast of the site. Here we have Block D, that's positioned to the northwest of the site, and that's the largest of the 4 blocks. So the first image, the image above it, shows a sort of street elevation that's from Rose Avenue, showing the site in the context with existing properties. And then we've got at the bottom a proposed site section, and that's looking north from within the site, and it's showing Block D to the left and the flank elevation of Block C on the right. So subject to the resolution of this planning committee, there are conditions recommended to ensure that the details relating to materials such as the brickwork, the metal cladding that you can see, windows, doors, and etc. are submitted and approved by the planning authority. So here we have the sort of the mix. It's shown the unit mix shown on the table. There's going to be a total of 29 new dwellings, as I mentioned previously, and it's going to provide a mix of unit types with a range of occupancy numbers, and it contributes positively to the housing mix. The development will safeguard amenity of occupiers, as you can see on the table shown on this slide. The units will all exceed the minimum national space standard requirements for a property of their type. And external amenity space. This slide shows the 2 amenity areas that are proposed within development. They're considered to be of good quality and they'd benefit from natural surveillance.
Each unit would also benefit from a private balcony. And the key that's shown on the right of the side just gives some details on the landscape and proposals, but that would also be subject to condition for further information. So the image above shows that there will be sufficient separation between the proposed dwellings and the surrounding neighbouring properties. It's noted that there's an 11-metre gap shown between the rear elevation of Block B and the property at number 47 Rose Avenue. But there are only bathroom windows within this rear elevation of this side elevation of Block B, and as such, the 11-metre separation is acceptable in this instance. So moving on to parking, the development will be served by a new vehicular access point from Rose Avenue with a new road surface laid into the site. The proposed parking layout and the resultant trip generation are considered acceptable for a development of this size, and it's not considered to cause any severe impact on the highway network. There'd be adequate waste storage provided within the site, and there's also sufficient space for waste collection vehicles to enter and manoeuvre within the site. The development requires a SAMS contribution, and that's shown on slides. That will be provided through a unilateral undertaking. Biodiversity improvements will also be provided off-site, and this will be secured through a unilateral undertaking. This slide summarises the figures that are required, and it totals approximately £50,000. Again, this will be secured through a unilateral undertaking. So yeah, in summary, we consider the scheme to be compliant with Gravesham's development plan and national planning policy. The principle of providing additional housing on the site is acceptable, and it would make efficient use of the land. The design and the scale of the scheme respects the established local character, whilst also protecting neighbour and future occupier amenity, whilst also delivering biodiversity net gain off-site. So we consider that with conditions and a unilateral undertaking, the proposal complies with all material considerations and is recommended for approval. So the recommendation to this committee is to delegate the application to the head of planning to grant planning permission, subject to the finalisation of planning conditions and the completion of a unilateral undertaking. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any comments or queries? Aaron.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to note, so it appears that we're losing dwellings that have really good garden space for families. And I noted that there was a couple of areas for formal play or informal play on this. I mean, it would be interesting to see a bit more about those areas because that really matters to me. I think families really miss that kind of space when they lose that. Just another point, looking at the elevation of that of being 3 stories as it is, and I just wonder what measures we are taking to reduce the impact on loss of privacy to the neighbouring homes. Thank you.
Thank you. So the 2 points I took there were regarding amenity areas. So that's going to be dealt with by landscaping conditions. And in terms of the impact on amenity, that's been fully considered and covered in the report, and we consider there to be no harm to residential amenity.
Leslie.
I'm looking at page 112 of the agenda papers. First, at the top of the page, it refers to the question of vehicle crossover requirements. The applicant has not completed adequate parking surveys. Could that not have been dealt with and overcome before this report? And also on that same page, it mentions about the consequences of a refusal. I mean, I've always understood planning board members to be fiercely independent. I wondered if it's appropriate to inhibit members with threats of what might be the consequences of a refusal by the inspectorate, by how they would be dealt with by the inspectorate. I know it's all true, but in my opinion, members should be fully aware of these situations and certainly be made aware during their training prior to these meetings. I don't personally think it's appropriate to put in the agenda to inhibit members in this way. Clarification, if I may. It says about affordable housing. I assume these are social rented housing. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify a couple of points. So the material considerations stated at the top of page 112 relate to two representations that were received, both raising objections to the proposal from neighbours. So those aren't, for example, KCC highway comments or comments from the applicant. Those are just the views of two representations who submitted comments to the application. And with regards to the comment about 4.4, on a number of occasions, there's been queries at planning committee in relation to this. So rather than repeat it at every planning committee, we've just, for members' benefit, included that information within the report. Members are still, as Councillor Mockley-Cox kindly pointed out, able to make the decisions that they wish to. We highly advise. Thank you, Chair.
Right. I've seen Peter Menley. Peter.
Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Just point of clarification. On my form here, it says we're gaining 12 units, but on your sheet it said 13. At the last page on your presentation.
So I'm being told it's 13 additional units. Yeah. So apologies for that confusion.
To come back.
There's 29 dwellings and there's 17 originally there. So that makes 12. It says there's 17 units originally there and 29 dwellings going up. Not on this.
Sorry, I'll just clarify on that. One of the units at number 7 is being retained.
Right, Lynn.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, I think this will enhance the area, having been the ward councillor with Councillor Croxton for 30 years before the boundary changes these last 2 years. And it's exciting because there'll be more homes for everyone. We desperately need homes. This is what we're doing, and it will definitely enhance the area somewhat. There. And I'm sorry, I must have read it in here, but is there a cycle storage as well? Yeah, I must have seen it, but I can't see it now.
We can put up the map plan that shows cycle storage. So it's on the same plan as the car parking. And if we get to it, it's the kind of greeny colour. Sorry, it's not that visible, but there's a few areas dotted around the site which are green, and that's where the cycle storage will go.
And Lynn, I'll let you come back.
Thank you. And we're having some flats there now. And will there be provisions for the council to have the recycling food bins in there, please, in the flats?
So that would be subject to condition. We're looking to impose a condition relating to refuse and recycling storage and provision.
Thank you, Lynn, and I endorse what you said. Jordan.
So thank you, Chairman. I just want to agree with the point that Councillor Hills made, and I think it is important to clarify that the threat of appeal is not a material planning consideration. And I think we could do without it in reports, because as Councillor Hills rightly pointed out, we've all attended planning training. We don't need that, given that it's not a material planning consideration, to be in every single report that we see, or indeed presented orally at these committees in the future. But the main point that I wanted to make is that in the report pack, it talks about the external consultee responses. And I have to say, the Designing Out Crime is one of the most comprehensive responses that I've seen. And I think this is fundamentally important, because one of the biggest fears that residents have when it comes to increasing the density of housing, particularly within the urban area, is that density can, not always, but it can translate to increases in crime and antisocial behaviour. The external consultee, the Designing Out Crime officer, recommends 16 or makes 16 suggestions for how crime could be designed out in this site. But those 16 points are concluded that we would welcome a discussion with the applicant agent about the site and designing out crime. I think if the committee are minded to approve the scheme tonight, what I would like to see the committee do is actually take those 16 points that have been recommended and put them in as formal conditions, because as I said, I do think they're vitally important. I think every single one of them is achievable, and I think we owe it to local residents when we're bringing forward borough schemes like this to make sure that they are robust against the threat of antisocial behaviour.
Shazad.
Thank you, Chair. So it's not normal practice to convert every point raised by the Design Out Crime officer into a planning condition. That's primarily because they are usually onerous and go above and beyond what we can ask for in policy terms. So they won't necessarily meet the relevant tests that have been set out for planning conditions to be reasonable. We will, however, be including this all these points as an informative, so that should the applicant wish to consider any of these and take these points forward, they can, but it's entirely up to the applicant.
Yes, go on, Jordan.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. That was exactly the point that I was making, that we should, as this is a scheme that's being brought forward, be setting a higher standard. And I do think it's entirely reasonable to look at the report that we have before us. We've got 16 suggestions before us, and to determine whether or not tonight they should be mandated into formal planning conditions. I can't see what the problem is with that, because unless there are individual points within those 16 that members fundamentally disagree with, I think if there's the opportunity to design out crime to the highest possible standards, we absolutely should be doing that.
Shazad.
Thank you, Chair. If the committee and chair are happy with this approach, we can amend the resolution of planning committee for the chair and I to consider these points as part of the delegated process, and where relevant, we can include those as conditions, and where relevant as informatives.
Thank you for that, Councillor Mead. I'm looking around. I see nobody else. So should we move to the speaker 4?
My understanding is from Jordan Mead, Councillor Jordan Mead, which I support, was that these conditions be made as part of our giving permission, not to refer back delegated opinion for somebody else.
Give me a moment. Councillor Mead, do you want to make that as a formal proposal, or are you happy to accept that myself and Shazad consider it and agree? what you're proposing, because I don't disagree at all with what you're saying.
I'll just throw that back, Chair, by saying procedurally I'm not on the committee. It's not for me to say, but what I do think is that those 16 points should be included. It's up to the formal advice as to how that's taken forward. If the entire decision is a delegated decision, then perhaps that's the way it should be dealt with. But I think we need some advice on that I can't give as a non-board member of this committee.
Yeah, I think it ought to be done as delegated. If the whole decision is a delegated decision, then it ought to be dealt with in that manner.
Members of a committee, Leslie? Yeah. Okay, I think we got that position. Right, so we move on, if we can, to the speeches for the application. So can I invite Ross to come forward? I think you've...
Great. Well, thank you very much for allowing us the time to speak in favour of the application this evening. My name's Ross Perry. I am an associate partner and studio lead for architecture at Baillie Gardner, and we're here representing the applicant, Gravesham Borough Council. I'm not going to cover sort of the ground that Ade's already covered. It's a comprehensive description of the development. What I'm going to do is just pick out on some of the salient points in order to convince you to support this application this evening. We've had positive engagement with residents through community consultation events back in 2025, as well as positive engagement with the local authority through the pre-application process. That's helped shape the design of the buildings and the location and siting of the buildings, and equally addressing key issues that have already been raised as part of this forum, looking at overlooking and separating distances. That's then culminated in a design of 4 blocks ranging from 2 to 3 stories, sited in a brownfield site that is certainly in need of redevelopment and a bit more love within the area. We've responded positively to both the planning policy as well as the design for Gravesham design codes, and that's contained within the material that we've submitted. The design, I feel, demonstrates high quality homes. We're proposing high quality, robust materials that again have been sort of shaped through that dialogue process with local residents as well as the local authority. The site itself is a much better use of a brownfield site, and the provision of 29 affordable homes with a net increase of 13 homes on site is certainly a positive for this area of Gravesham. The homes themselves will be sustainable, and we've worked with our consultants to make sure that these homes are performing in terms of high energy performance. So again, positive result for those residents who then come to occupy the buildings, as well as other points that have been touched on in terms of private amenity. So every apartment has access to private open space, whether that's in the form of a terrace on the ground floor or a balcony for those that are up at upper levels. The improved landscaping, moving from a hard landscape surface to a softer landscape surface and providing those areas for play that have been mentioned by others as part of this dialogue. And that's been designed by our partner Landscape Architects, and feel that this really does enhance the area, moving away from that hardscaped.
Thank you, Mr. Peary.
Thank you.
It's been very helpful. Can I invite you to take any questions? Any questions from members of the committee? Leslie.
Thank you. Is there anything you can say to assure me of the design quality that you referred to? The reason I ask is because I gave my support to a development in Chalk next to the village hall, which I thought would be an improvement. and they look just like storage warehouses and hard to sell at that. So I just wondered if there's anything you can say to assure me, please.
Well, fingers crossed they don't end up looking like storage sheds. As part of the application process, we've worked hard with the local authority as part of the application material. We've submitted drawings that illustrate the design intent. We've referred to them as bay details. They outline the specific design intent of the blocks. That's been signed up to with our client, and that will, go on to form part of the proposals that are built. So hopefully that's enough reassurance that it's within the design documentation and the drawings that are being submitted for approval.
Just a question, you might not even know the answer to it. If permission was given today, what sort of timescale are you looking at before you actually start building on the site? And the reason I ask is because there's too many planning applications that have been approved and nothing's gone on the sites.
No, it's a fair question. We know that our client, Gravesham Borough Council, are keen to proceed. I can't put an exact time scale, but know that there's work's being done to mobilise the site in order to prepare it for development. So, yeah, again, without knowing the exact ins and outs of how the council want to proceed, we're keen to see change, yeah.
Shazad.
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify that point, so effectively, the normal process is once planning permission is granted by the local planning authority to the other arm of the council, there's various procedures that have to be gone through. For example, going out to a procurement exercise to get contractors in place, etc. So all those processes will have to go through before there's a firm timetable. But from experience, when colleagues obtain planning permission to bring forward affordable housing in the borough, they've not followed through on it. They've always followed through on it and delivered it as soon as possible. So I don't think, from what I'm aware of, that there's any desire to do this at a slow pace, etc. The aspiration will be to deliver this scheme as soon as possible.
Thank you. Lynn.
Thank you, Chair. With the economic situation at the moment, with so many high bills, are you thinking about perhaps putting in heat pumps that might bring the cost of the electricity and to come down? And will you still be using gas as well as electric? Because I do believe that most boilers these days now that put in are electric.
Yeah, so the intention is to provide an all-electric development. So working with our MEP engineers, all apartments are heated via air source heat pumps. That answers the question.
Thank you. I see no other questions, so you may escape. Right, colleagues on committee, any comments, opinions, or shall we move to looking for a proposal? And seconded. Shall we vote on the recommendation as you see in front of you today? Those in favour, please indicate. Yep.
Thank you. So the recommendation would be amended to say delegate the application to the head of planning in consultation with the chair to grant planning permission subject to the finalisation of planning conditions, etc. As per your screen.
Thank you. Right, I think that's approved. Those in favour, please indicate. Yes, unanimous. Thank you. So on to the last one, mercifully, which is 6D Cascades Leisure Centre, Fong Lane. Who wants to take this one? Richard? Right, okay, off to you, for you, Richard.
Thank you, Chair. The application before you is for a non-material amendment relating to Planning Permission reference number 2022-1293 for Cascades Leisure Centre. For members' information, this is the red line plan of the application site. The applicant is seeking changes to this description of development via the Section 96A non-material amendment route in order to facilitate a consideration of a separate Section 73 minor material amendment application. The minor material amendment application is not before the board tonight and is being considered under a different planning application reference number and will be coming to the next meeting. Since the extant development was designed, there have been significant changes to market conditions and build costs, which has led Gravesham Borough Council reappraising options while seeking to still deliver a high quality new leisure and community facility. The amendment sought solely relates to the amending the description of the development. It makes no further changes to the approved scheme. For clarity, references are removed to clip and climb, then the 2 squash courts, and the improvements to the existing play area, as you can see on the screen before you. The recommendation is the application be delegated to the head of planning to grant permission subject to the full wording on the screen before members. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments, questions from members of the committee? No? Or even from any other members? No? Right. So shall we move forward? I'm looking for a proposal for this. Thank you. And seconded, shall we take the recommendation? Those in favour, please indicate. Right. And any against? 1. Right, you voted. Okay, right, colleagues. That moves us on to number 7, reports for information. There are none. Number 8, plan applications. A delegated and a copy is in the appropriate spot. Number 9, any other business? There's no other business. There's nobody to exclude. There's no part B. Can I thank you for coming along and for your indulgence this evening? Many thanks, colleagues. Have a good evening. Thank you.